Bob's muted.
You ready for me?
I'm not going to do any of that kind of stuff over the phone unless I call them, you know.
You ready for me?
We're ready for you, Bob.
What am I doing? Pledge of allegiance?
Yes,
I
sir.
don't know if we should be
Okay.
financially-
I pledge allegiance to the United States of America. I've lost my voice. Can somebody else help me?
What is it now? It's 4.
Jeannie, could you help me? I've lost my voice.
2 point something. 2 words.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the agenda. Would somebody step in there?
Agenda.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I second.
Motion is seconded. Real quickly, is Trina on? Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes, Alex. Thank you for
Thank
checking.
you. So it's been motioned and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
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 Did I tell you?
Thank
I
you.
had to put my dog down?
And we are to the oath of office for myself and our new addition to the board, Diane McNeil.
Anyways, it's huge tumor. We just noticed it this weekend. It's horrible. And Mike had said
Okay,
something about her having some sort of growth on her
Are you ready?
back on her ribs. No.
Yes.
Unmute yourself.
Okay, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I've been
Okay.
hearing.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm losing my voice a little bit. I'll do my best here. Okay, I state your name.
I, Alex Bolds,
I, Diane McNeil,
Do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend
do solemnly
I solemnly swear and I will support and defend
do
the
solemnly
Constitution. Okay,
or affirm that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against
That
all
I-
enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the
Constitution of the State of California,
Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose or evasion,
mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which I'm about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
the duties upon which I am about to enter.
And that's it. Congratulations.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Welcome aboard, Diane.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. No, just one.
Okay, and we've done the oath of office. And Bob, are you going to hang in for the rest of the meeting, or what are you going to do?
He's no longer a member.
Do I have an option?
Yeah.
I'm
Alex,
afraid you put an option.
Alex,
I would-
Alex,
What's that? So if you're looking in the video there, Mr. Colvig, Mark Westerberg is holding up a plaque for you.
Okay.
And before we move on with the rest of the meeting, if you guys don't mind, I'd like to make a couple of comments here. And I went ahead and wrote a little something up, and you'll bear with me. And it's a little information about Mr. Colvig, and I'd like you all to take a moment to learn just a little bit about Bob. Bob's family relocated to the Willits community in 1960. He attended the Willits schools and graduated from Willits High School in 1966. Bob has dedicated his adult life to education in many ways.
There were 4 people running for 2 spots.
Oh.
And so.
Please mute your stuff, please. He received his bachelor's. Bob has dedicated his adult life to education in many ways. He received his bachelor's degree in business administration from Wittenberg University in Springfield, Ohio, followed by master's degrees in public administration and another master's in counseling psychology from Chico State. He capped his personal academic achievements with a doctorate in educational leadership from the University of San Francisco. Including his most recent 4-year term serving the Willits community on this board, Dr. Colvig has spent 45 years working as an educator in a variety of positions, including teacher, counselor, and coach, and interim positions of assistant principal and high school principal. He's worked for UC Berkeley in their admissions department and taught for Mendocino College, Lassen College, and UC San Diego. Dr. Colvig has been recognized for his achievements as a counselor, as a teacher, and a coach at local, state, and national levels. He was even featured in Sports Illustrated for his achievements of his wrestling programs over a 21-year span. Since his retirement from Willits Unified School District, he has worked as an independent college admissions counselor, providing services to families throughout Northern California. Dr. Colvig's student clients have been accepted to over 100 colleges and universities. Most of those students were offered sizable scholarships, examples of which include the $300,000 plus Gates Scholarship, the $144,000 Eccles Scholarship, and many offered the $100,000 Rickey Scholarship, as well as many others. Dr. Colvig's dedication to education runs in the family, so much so that his wife Linda is a retired teacher from Willits Unified. His son Michael serves the district as our high school principal, and his daughter Mary is one of our teachers. On a more personal level, I'm proud to have known Dr. Colvig and his family for over 40 years. I know Dr. Colvig to be one of the strong, quiet types. He is a hardworking, generous, honest man with unassailable integrity and a great sense of humor. He brought tremendous experience and knowledge to this board for the past 4 years. His contributions will be greatly missed. Dr. Colvig, on behalf of the Willits Unified School District, thank you for your service to the students and the community of Willits.
Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.
and Bob, you were one of the first people I met when I came to Willits at my interview. When I walked into my interview, you were standing out at the front door when I walked in.
Yep, I remember well.
And I appreciate all you've done, and you do a great job for the community. And
You'll be all right. I think Jeannie.
we're going to tap you for other things, I'm sure.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to serve the community of Willits in the different variety of offices that I've worked in. And this last 4 years experience as a school board member has truly been a capstone of my educational career. And I appreciate the community of Willits giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Take care, Bob.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Bob, for your years of service.
all right, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Okay, we'll move on. And let's see. We have the organizational meeting. And we are at Election of board president. So we would look for a nomination for board president.
I will nominate Alex Bold.
I second it.
I was fast. That tells me that somebody else doesn't want to run the meeting. Is there any other nominations? Hearing none, I'm happy to accept it one more year. I have to tell you guys though, this is my last year as president because I have, we need to make sure that when I finally move on, somebody else has got those skills as well. Election of board clerk. So we have a nomination for board clerk. Hearing none, I'll go ahead and make a nomination. I'd like Robert Chavez, nominate Robert Chavez as board clerk.
I second.
It's been nominated and seconded. Is any other nominations?
You guys got to unmute if you're board members. You want.
Any other nominations? Hearing none. I'm assuming it's Mr. Chavez, are you willing to take that position?
Yes, I am. Thanks for the payback, Alex.
Just so everybody's clear on how this typically works, the idea behind this, at least it was explained to me by past board members, was that the clerk generally is in the position to take over the presidential duties the following year or when that president finally steps down. And so my hope is to not be in this position because I feel like I have a lot more homework to do as the president than I do as a typical board member. So kind of looking for a break at some point in a not too distant future. Thank you, Bob. Any questions with respect to that? Myself as the president and Mr. Chavez as the clerk.
Paula, you going to unmute?
I see you're trying to do it. It's not working, Paula.
You're either poking the iPad in the eye or something there.
Well,
I can ask you to unmute. Let me see if I can unmute you.
Unmute. Oh, okay.
There you are. You're in.
You should have considered yourselves lucky and let it slide. But oh well.
okay.
So
Can we move on to appointment of our board secretary?
I thought, yeah.
Okay, moving on. Appointment of board secretary, and board secretary is traditionally our superintendent. I would propose we maintain that that same status quo.
I second it.
Any discussion further beyond that? Okay, we're all in agreement. So moving forward, that was easy. Thank you. And now we're talking about representation to all the school sites. In the past, we have each taken a variety of different school sites. Is there any, we've had this discussion each year. It gets different twist each year, it seems like. Is there any discussion?
I want to know if so what are the schools? Sanhedrin, Brookside, Blosser, what is it called? Bechtel, the high school, and Sherwood, or does Sherwood combine with someone else? Like
No,
Sanhedrin?
Sherwood is its own school. And
But aren't 6 reps.
Yeah, generally Robert does that because his children go to Sherwood.
Right, but I was thinking I wanted to do Sanhedrin, but then that leaves 4 large schools for 3 people, and I wondered, is that what works out?
Well, yeah, there's still five schools left and 4 board members. So if you did Sanhedrin, you could
That's
also do
3
another.
schools. I could do whom?
You could do another school as well.
Oh, another. Okay.
Well, I'm happy to continue on at the high school, although I have to admit that when the opportunity arises, I like to stick my nose into all the schools wherever the opportunity arises. For example, I was enjoying until the COVID thing put us back going to the site council meetings at Bechtel, for example. But I'm open to any suggestion here.
I'd like to continue at Brookside.
Can I take Blosser?
Certainly.
Thank
So,
you.
Mark, are you taking notes?
Yes.
Okay, well then I would still like to go to Sanhedrin, but I could go to Bechtel also. And if you wanted to do their site council, that would be nifty. I mean, I don't have an issue with that. There are a couple of things that I pay attention to at the high school that I pay attention to at the high school regardless. So I don't really think we're stuck with the school. I think that we belong in all of them anyway.
I tend to agree. I also point out that from the standpoint of contact, I think anybody at any of those facilities should be able to contact any one of us at any time for any reason.
Absolutely. Yeah, I haven't felt like only Blosser used to connect with me or anything. You know, I always heard from a number of people from a variety of sites.
Paula,
Okay.
Paula, do you mind if I ride shotgun with you on Bechtel? I have a daughter headed that way next year.
Oh, good. I forgot she should be going there this year. Oh, well, yeah, I think you should do that all that you want. We could share it. I'll go to especially the ELACs and the bilingual stuff, and you can go to the especially whatever 6th graders do stuff and anything else you want to go to, including site council. You could fill 2 or 3 spots for them. You know, a parent, a board member, anything, everything.
Thank you, Paula.
Oh, yeah.
We'll even let you sub a couple classes, Robert.
Hey, there you go.
So does that cover all the bases, Mark?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So moving on, informational, we have La Vida Charter Schools annual report, the Willits Elementary Charter Schools annual report, the Willits Charter School annual report. So La Vida?
Alex, I've invited them. They don't need to go through their whole report, but I just invite them if you have questions and just to kind of give you a brief overview of their student population, what's going well, what isn't, just a brief overview. But you have their complete folders in your packet. So, and we'll start with you from La Vida.
Yeah, I'd really like a kind of an idea of how you guys are dealing with remote learning and COVID in our current climate.
La Vida is pretty much set up for having to work at home. So it hasn't been a huge change for us because we're independent study, we're 100% independent study with the option of doing on-site classes. So everybody has comprehensive curriculum that they can do at home, and the vast majority, like only 2% at the most, have classes that are online, and that's an occasional high school kid for a class. But so everybody has books and they work out of at home. So that part's been good, although being independent study in the best of worlds, it's still very kind of a lonely, pursuit. And so the social aspects that the on-site classes provide are really critical for the balanced well-being of the children, and the parents are feeling it. So we're starting to feel more and more of that kind of the stress and trauma of just not having friends. And we're seeing, kids, there's depression and even in some of the younger kids, but for the most part, I gotta say, La Vida's been so lucky. Our ADA was up for the year. I mean, it wasn't the best we were 93 percent plus something apportionment rate, which is a little bit lower than we like to be. But we still, from P2 to the end of the year, we only lost 1.5 ADA. So that was a nice solid, I feel like we had pretty solid attendance. And you know, we're doing our best to try to support parents, and the end of the year survey, I mean, they gave us a 9.8 improvement rating. So that was, I thought, pretty impressive. I was amazed, I gotta say. So yeah, La Vida, we're one of the lucky ones. We are in good shape.
And we struggled and continue to struggle with some of our families not having very good internet access. How do you guys handle that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we do too. So so we have some Zoom classes, and we really encourage people to come. And then we have them recorded and put them up on the internet so that they can go. And so we encourage the ones that really struggle still to go to one of your Willits Unified parking lots and watch the class video, because they can get a good strong signal there. And some people do that. We are providing, you know, we do some hotspots, but honestly, the folks that don't have internet, a hotspot doesn't help. You know, they're in an area that there really is no internet. And so we do, for a few of the families, so they do phone meetings. A few of the families have just some one-on-one meetings. Very few, though, come in.
So Anne, I have a question about a sentence in your end of the year report regarding the Native American population.
Yeah.
It says
about them falling off the map.
Yeah, and I see that if I'm reading it correctly, that the Native American population is 18% of your student body. Yeah. But you said they've fallen off the map, and I don't.
So it wasn't everybody. It wasn't that full 18%. It was a group of kids in the Coyote Valley Rancheria that I don't know, maybe 4 kids that the what is it? The Rancheria, or their community, did a total lockdown. They shut the doors. They didn't let anybody in. They didn't let anybody out, and really isolated themselves as a way of protection. So we had a little bit of phone conversation, but we did not have much conversation until the beginning of the school year.
Okay, thanks. That clarifies it for me.
Any other questions for Ann? Let's move on to Willits Elementary Charter.
Hi, everyone. This is Charlene. I'm keeping my picture off because I'm working from home and I have very bad internet. I'm sorry. I hope this comes through clearly. For the distance learning, we are doing Zoom classes every day, and we have 5 to 6 students in each class, so that the teachers are actually doing 4 Zooms a day for half an hour. And it's very interactive because what we've done is do a flipped classroom model. So the teachers are recording themselves teaching the lesson, and then the students watch the recording, and then they do the actual practice with the teacher. So it's interactive. We found that the small groups have really provided a lot of emotional and social support for the students. They feel happy to participate because it's only that small group, and the teacher can keep track of their projects a lot better and easier because every kid basically has to participate because there's so few kids on at one time. And we also found, like, as a technical issue with doing Zoom, you can only see 5 kids. So if you have 6 kids and you're sharing your screen, it's really hard to keep going back and forth and actually see them all. So it's really, we're pleased that we kept the small groups. And we have a small sort of program on campus for people who need to work and they have no place to put their children. So we've had about 12 kids on average on campus for supervised distance learning, which the kids are still doing all of their Zooms and the regular work, but we just have people to watch them and to do other things with them after they finish their work.
Charlene,
Good, thank you.
This is Jeannie. I just wanted to say I was really impressed with a couple of sentences in your packet. You said 100% of credentialed staff returned for the 2019-2020 school year. This is the 7th year all credentialed staff have returned. That,
yes.
that says so much about your campus and your not only what you're offering kids, but it says a lot about what you're offering the adults that are connected to your school too. I just want to commend you for that.
I thank you. I'm so happy that I landed here. It's only my 2nd year as director, and I have inherited the most amazing staff. I'm so thrilled. So yes, thank you.
Any other questions? We'll go ahead and move on to the Willits Charter School.
Oh, good evening. I'm Jennifer Lockwood. I'm the director of Willits Charter School. Hopefully you can hear me okay. Yeah, we are, it was fun to write the annual report because it was nice to go back and think about what was going on when students were here, because we were having a really good year last year. And then, you know, unfortunately, all of the, you know, COVID-19 stuff happened, but we're plugging along here. We're doing pretty well. Our students are doing either Google Meet or Zoom, depending on what the teacher is using for that class, and we're using Google Classroom. We are still doing electives. We've got theater arts and art, and we're doing student leadership, and we've got coding as well. We are, you know, fortunately with the COVID-19 funds, we were able to purchase a lot of different online curriculum. And so we purchased, you know, sometimes up to 5 to 6 years worth of these subscriptions to the curriculum. So we do plan, there are aspects of this that we will carry on, you know, for years to come. And we were able to really look at some quality curriculum, and, you know, just like everyone else, of course, some students are thriving and some students are really struggling. We're trying to bring all the students that struggle onto campus. So we've had for quite a while now cohorts at each grade level that come here every day. And so we've had a good practice of what it will be like to bring students back. And it's a little more flexible. You know, we don't have like a really strict bell schedule, and we've eased up on some of the stricter rules on campus, like about cell phones outside and everything, because we're trying to make the students feel comfortable, kind of like they are at home. But it is nice to have students on campus, and it's primarily either students that have no Wi-Fi and a hotspot's not going to help, or students with disabilities, or students that just have no supervision at home, and they were not able to walk themselves through their day by themselves. So it's been a challenge, but it's been good in other ways. And we're just, you know, forging along like everyone else. So, but we feel like it's been going well.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Sure.
Any questions for Jennifer?
I like how she adapted, and also as well as picking up the kids that are falling in between the slats there.
And I appreciate you and Charlene putting out that food service thing for me today. We're trying to increase our counts for food service, and I sent them notes that they posted as well to help encourage students to get meals while they're on distance learning.
Yep. All right.
We would like to thank you too, Mark, for including us in that. It's really important to help our families. We have a small food pantry at school, and the number of families that are using it has increased significantly. So there's a great need in the community for food help.
just wanted to tell about something that I saw on Facebook the other day. A woman who's a mother of kids in the school posted that she wanted to go. There was a food distribution going on down by the ball fields, and she wanted to go down and get the food, but she couldn't because her kids were. It was during the time of their Zoom meetings, and I really thought about it, and I thought how sad that a family in this time that we're in has to choose between making sure their kids get educated by the electronic method that we're using or get food to feed their families. It's a real, we have to think about how this is impacting our families. So I was really struck by that. What a choice.
Unfortunately, it shouldn't be a choice.
It shouldn't be.
Yeah. And a little more coordination with and communication about this, and leaving a time for those parents to get there.
Well, so somebody did answer her and said that families can pick up enough food for 2 families and bring that food so that somebody else could pick up her food for her. So.
I believe Mark would have to correct me, but the rules for this has been significantly relaxed, correct?
Correct. If you are 18 years or younger and you are in the community, you don't even have to be our student or even a charter student. Anybody in the community 18 years and younger can come and get breakfast, lunch, and we're considering booting up a dinner program soon. So yeah, we're using what's called the Seamless Summer Program. We haven't got off the summer program yet.
This was the food bank distribution I was talking about, Alex, not the school.
Yeah.
Oh, I got you. I understand. Okay.
I went to, go to my work email.
Okay, so we're done with the charter school stuff. Thank you for your presentations. Thank you for your annual reports. And we'll move on to item D, bond presentation, finance plan overview with Adam Bauer. Is Adam hiding out there in the wings somewhere? There he
Adam,
is.
here. Thank you. I had you on mute there. Let me do a share screen here. So the host, can they enable share screen for me?
I think he's working on it for you.
Great. Well, good evening to, while we wait for that, just give a brief introduction. You have a few parties from your finance team here, Jason Chung from Film and Roll Up as well. And then my name is Adam Bauer. We serve as financial advisor to the district. And you also have Katie Dobson from Jones Hall, who serves as bond counsel, the attorney on the transaction. I'm going to try to see if I have access to do share screen now. Oh, there we go. Now let me get to the presentation. Okay, can folks see the cover presentation here?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, the purpose for our meeting today is there's some documents before you that approve the first issuance of bonds under the recently approved GEO-bond measure. So congratulations. It was a tough year to do something like this, and you got yourself over that threshold. So once again, congratulations. One of the things that district staff has communicated to us is that it's very important to be very conservative in our approach. So we started out conservative, but we did this over 4 to 5 bond issues, and we have also ratcheted down the tax rate to make sure we're being even more conservative. So we're looking at a first issuance of not to exceed $4 million with this first one. And then just make sure it's working. Is everyone seeing assessed value now on the page?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so we are rock and rolling now. So now what we've detailed here is one of the most important factors about your GEO-bond measure is the taxable property value within your district boundaries. and that is the assessed value. That's all commercial and residential property. And that equates to $1,376,000,000. And so we use that, and there's a tax rate that gets multiplied by that amount, and that's basically the amount we have available for bond repayment. You can see down below, we show some historical averages. When we do bonds, we do projections, and we assume some level of growth. Certainly don't want to assume levels that we had in 2006, 7, and 8, right? So between 8 and 9% assessed value, but also we're probably higher than 11 through 13, where you actually had some declines. So look at these averages when we're looking at doing projections in the future. So, where do we stand? I feel like a broken record because rates just keep getting lower. You can see these lines here represent the municipal market data, and that's essentially my Dow Jones Industrial Average. I look at it. It's how interest rates are trending for both the 30-year and the 10-year. You can see the 30-year is a little bit higher. And you can see we're generally trending lower until we had the disruption when businesses shut down as a result of the pandemic. And you can see both these lines shot up, as we call the sell everything rally. Well, investors sold municipal bonds, which made it so more expensive to borrow. Good news is we were not selling bonds then. And we've really just seen rates trend lower since then, with some, it goes down, goes up a little bit, but generally in the lower direction since, back to 2018. What we show in this top left here is the blue bar. So when we sell bonds, it's not like a home mortgage where we have one interest rate. You actually have about 30, one for each maturity. And what these blue lines represent is the range of interest rates that each one of those maturities have had going back to 2005. And then that red line represents where we're at today. And so you can see at the beginning, we're scraping against the bottom. So all-time historic lows. And then if you get to like year 9, you can see there, we're still very low, but we've lifted off the bottom. So not at all-time lows, but very, very low. And why is that? You probably are asking. If you go to this chart to the bottom right, if it's a green bar, what that means is money's flowing into municipal bond funds, and your bonds are municipal bonds. If it's red, that means money's flowing out. And you can see once we all realized we had the pandemic here in the country, investors sold everything and moved out of municipal bonds, put money in cash, and you saw this red outflow here, which was dramatic. And then since then, though, you've really seen money continue to flow back in. So you basically, if you think about supply and demand, you have a ton of demand and supply has not grown that much. And so that's driving down rates. A lot of school districts failed with their GEO-bond measures or did not go out in 2020. And so the regular supply of school district GEO-bonds is not there. And so I think investors will be very eager to participate in your bond sale. So we just want to give some general background because now I've been pretty macro and now getting a little more detailed on your school district financing. For a unified district, you can go up to 2.5% of your assessed value if you have voter approval for that without a state waiver. We're not near that, so that's not really something we need to be too concerned about. And the other thing that we really do need to be very concerned about, because it's very important to your voters and your community, is the tax rate. And if you look there, you can see for a unified district, the maximum tax rate. Excuse me?
Well, aren't you festive with your red pants?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So maybe someone could put us on mute.
Could everybody except for Adam please mute?
Great, thank you. So then if you are in that second set of bullet points there, a unified district has to be at or below $60 per 1,000 when they do their projections. And as you know, we're well below that on what we asked for.
How's your husband's gout doing?
He's doing better.
And then if we're also, even though we've got voter approval for that 40 range, we're actually going below that. So hopefully the message that you're taking away from this is we're being very cautious with the tax rate to make sure that we're not overburdening the community. And what is the tax rate? It's a debt service plus a small reserve that the county holds divided by assessed value. And that's the tax rate. And what we need that to be is at the target rates that I'm going to show you in a slide or two. So Measure I, I know you worked so hard. You got a 60.04% approval rate, which is a 5% cushion. You needed 55, but I know given what took place in March, you didn't want to leave any room for error, but you cleared the bar very well. And then we've asked for a total of 17 million. And as I've told you from the beginning, we're not looking at that full 17 million now. We're just looking at a piece of it, and that's 4 million. I've already mentioned this bullet point probably a few times to you now, is the maximum that we could have asked for was 60. We asked for 40. And I'm going to show you we're even below that in this next bullet point. To make sure that we're being sensitive to anything that could take place. We don't know what's going to go on with the pandemic and how that's going to impact things. So we're starting the tax rate off at $25 per 1,000. So we're still below, we're even $15 below that $40 per 1,000. So there's a lot going on this slide, and I'm going to try to break it down for you. So the first thing we're doing with those boxes to the right there, we're just showing you the 60 and 40 and where those would be if we would have issued all the way up against those. You can see now this blue line represents the $25. Each time we sell bonds, we get to make a choice. And the choice for right now is, so please ignore the red, green, purple, and this other blue. If you focus on this little bit, this royal blue here, we're at $25 per 1,000 for the next 3 years. And then we drop it down to 10. And then what that does is it allows us to come back in 2024 and issue our next series of bonds. And in this case, we show it going up to 40. But let's say that things aren't going well at the district over the next 3 years. We get to revisit that conversation as long as we're talking about something over $10. Then we have the option to adjust this amount to make sure that we can stay at our tax rate that we desire. So what we did is we assumed $25 per 1,000 for the next 3 years, and then we assume we go up to what the voters approved of $40 after that. And what that allows us to do is issue bonds in 21, 24, 26, 28, 31, and then by that point we'll have fully exhausted the full 17 million. The other thing I mentioned to you is we should be careful on our growth projections, because if we have some of those negative years or things like that, that could make our tax rate higher than we're projecting. We assume 2% growth for next year and 3% the year after that, along with that much lower tax rate. So from, I think, any measurement, this is considered a very conservative first issuance. So as far as steps go, the district staff did some in-depth preparation and had their credit rating presentation with a credit rating agency via phone on Monday. And then this evening, we're before you seeking the consideration of the resolution of issuance. And what you're doing with that resolution is you're approving the maximum parameters and then allowing the district staff to move forward as long as we're within those parameters. We expect to get the rating from the credit analysts just before the end of the year. The reason why this is so important to us is we want to be able to get into the bond market in early January. As I showed you, there's a lot of money that's been flowing into the municipal bond funds, and we want to be able to be one of the first ones that investors are looking at. And so by pricing that week of January 14th, we will be one of those first. And so hopefully we'll be able to get even better rates we're seeing right now, even though that's a little hard to believe because rates are just so good the last few weeks here. And then finally, we call this closing. I think you look at this as you have your funds available. The money will be deposited with the county treasury, and you can start requisitioning against that then. So want to outline some of those next steps. You have quite the team here to also answer any questions. And so I will stop sharing and we can be ready for any questions with the team.
So Adam, talk to us briefly about what the initial costs are associated with the bond and what those ongoing costs might be as we issue bonds in the future.
Great. So, you know, there's some costs right out of the bat and that get paid from the bond proceeds. So that's cost of issuance, your bond counsel, your financial advisor, the ratings, All those will be somewhere between $175,000 and $200,000. And then you will have an underwriter's discount, which we're still working to negotiate those fees. And we want to get closer to pricing so we can tell the underwriter, here's exactly the lowest rates that we're seeing right now. And we want your fees to be within that. So those are the fees that get paid up front. And then there's the interest costs that your taxpayers repay. And when I keep talking about how low rates are, that's what I'm getting at, is that ongoing payment that your taxpayers have to make are very low compared to historical standards.
Okay. And then I understand for example, you guys gave us an estimated cost of this initial bond sale of being somewhere around $211,000 to cover all of those estimated fees and so forth associated with it. The question I have is, what about the next issuance 3 years down the road?
Okay, good question. Each bond issue has its own fixed cost element to it. So if we can consolidate these bond sales down the road, if it makes sense to do so, there will be savings. But right now, I would assume about the same cost of issuance for each series of bonds.
Okay.
And that cost of issuance is $211,000?
If I could ask Jason to speak up, I think he has the exact cost of issuance.
Yes, that's correct. The $211,000 is our most current estimate as of today. Adam had mentioned a few components that provide that breakdown: the cost of issuance, which is fees to our firm, Jones Hall, the rating agency, other parties. That is actually, our estimate is $135,000, which is pretty cost efficient. And then when you add in that underwriter's discount, we have a maximum, according to the resolution, of approximately $60,000. And of course, as Adam mentioned, we will work closer to pricing to get that number as low as possible and as fair as possible. That third element that equals the $211,000 is called bond insurance. And bond insurance is an expense that districts that have a credit rating lower than AA, which we expect the district to fall under, districts have that option to purchase bond insurance. That allows your credit to trade and price closer to those AA pure credits. And we wouldn't purchase bond insurance costs unless we believed that it resulted in a lower cost of borrowing for your district.
And so then what's the insurance rate that he alluded to? I'm sorry, the interest rate.
They typically charge a fixed amount of your total debt service, and it's usually interpreted as basis points, which is 1/10,000. So it's typically about 0.25% of your total payment.
Was the question more directed at what is our overall interest rate that we expect at this time for the bonds? Was that what the question was getting?
Right, I'm a little, yeah, what I'm interested in is that interest rate. You said the bond payers will, or rather the taxpayers for the bond will pay. And so I'm wanting to know what that equals in money. If we're paying, if it goes to $25 per 100,000 or 40 or 60, what's the rate of interest that will be attached to that?
Okay, thank you for clarifying. So that rate of interest is really tied to a true interest cost, and that's also disclosed in the good faith estimate in the resolution. So you can interpret your estimated cost of financing for this bond issue at 3.27%.
Okay.
Which is very inexpensive when you look at it. And it's like buying a house. You know, you pay $100,000 for the house, and by the time you finish paying it off, you paid $175,000. There's over a 30-year period. There's nothing different here, and in fact, I want to say that the $4 million in proceeds here was going to be somewhere around 6.2 million in total payoff.
That's correct. Approximately 6.7 million.
6.7. I read it here somewhere. I can't put my finger on the page. Sorry.
But this is not unique. This is every single bond that is done in the state of California and pretty much every state in the nation. So
Yes.
We just happen
it's
to be
the
at
normal.
a very low interest rate right now, which is good for us.
Yes, it's the cost of doing business. I get it.
Yeah.
Thank you for the explanation on the insurance issue. That was one of the questions I had. And then the other one is, you guys are issuing bonds in $5,000 blocks. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I don't know what the reason for that is, and I'm curious, is that common? Is it done in larger denominations or smaller?
That's the smallest. And there's been some efforts to look at doing smaller tranches than that. But those are very, very rare and done for very large bond issuances. Like let's say the state of California were to say, we want, all of our residents to be able to buy bonds. In those circumstances, they might look at taking on some extra costs to allow for something like that. But 5,000 is the minimum amount that is typically used. Like when I say typically, I mean like 99% of the time.
Okay, I was just kind of curious if I'm assuming it's more expensive to use those smaller denominations. On the other hand, if you were able to issue them at $100,000 blocks, what would that do?
So I don't have like a breakdown of what the cost differential would be. What you typically do then is you start precluding yourself from getting an investor that just wanted 40,000. And so 5,000 is kind of the accepted kind of lowest level that you don't preclude yourself from getting a wide group of investors.
Okay, understand.
I have one more question, and what I'm having an issue understanding is if the district is set up now for a $17 million loan, so to speak, to be covered by bonds. Okay, and so then the 6.1 or whatever you said $1 million, that is what it costs. That means that the district will be getting $11 million more or less to spend on repairs and things, or that means that's added into it and eventually will be paid off at $18 million. No, what is it? $24 million or 22 or whatever.
So the total repayment that Jason referenced includes the principal and interest. The only thing that counts against the 17 million is the principal. And so, for example, if we were issuing these bonds 10 years ago when rates were higher, we might say something to the effect, we're repaying 7.5 million, but we're issuing $4 million in principal. That 3.5 wouldn't count against the 17. You still get to issue the same amount. It's just your voters and taxpayers would have to pay back more. So just to be really clear, the only thing that counts against that authorization amount is principal, not the interest portion.
Okay.
And it's favorable for our community to have the interest rate low.
Yes.
Adam, right now we're going to issue bonds or sell bonds in the amount of $4 million. That's going to obligate us for basically 30 years to repay, I should say obligate our community for 30 years to repay that roughly 6.7 million, assuming we issue no more bonds or sell no more bonds, correct?
That's right. And the one caveat I'd have to this is we typically put what we call a call feature in there. And what that is the right to be able to refinance the bonds down the road. Typically, we put one in there that doesn't allow that to happen for 10 years. So a little different than your home mortgage where you can just kind of keep refinancing every 6 months if you wanted to. In this case, investors are lining up millions of dollars. And so they don't want to go borrow $1 million and then have you repay them 30 days later. So the kind of industry standard is about a 10-year period where we will not repay investors, but should rates be low enough 10 years from now, we could refinance these and potentially lower that overall repayment amount that Jason has referenced.
Right. I'm just trying to get clear on one thing and probably help Paula with a little bit of the way this works as well.
Okay.
Assuming we we sell $4 million worth of bonds now, and we sell no more bonds out of the 17 million that were authorized. The taxpayer is on the hook for approximately 30 years to pay back that 4 million plus approximately 2.7 in interest over that period of time.
That is correct.
On the other hand, if 3 years from now, we sell another $3 million in bonds, now our principal goes to 7. Our interest is going to be correspondingly higher as well. The question I have here, though, is, are we still on that same 30-year time span, or is...
No, you keep going out. Each time you do it, you can go out for that same amount of time. You're not constrained to one 30-year block. So a 10-year program, if you issue bonds over 10 years, your taxpayers are likely to repay it over 40 years.
Understand. Thank you.
This is a good time to sell bonds, and the interest rate is low, which means that our payback from the community is lower, and getting $17 million right now would not really help us. We could not use $17 million in 2 years. Our projects are going to need to stretch over time, which is a good thing because we can control that rate and timing.
Makes all sense. I don't have any further questions. Anybody else on the board? How about from the community? Cool. Hearing none, so we'll go ahead and...
I have one. Hello?
Hello?
Alec?
Is that Mr. Green?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan.
Just a question. What is your best guess about the yearly income raised from the tax hike? So at $25 per 100,000, how much a year do you estimate that generates in our community?
So this is Jason, and based on your district's assessed value, I think it was 1.4 at a $25 rate, that generates roughly 330 to 350,000 in annual revenue. And then of course, when you go up to the $40 rate, it gets substantially higher.
Thank you.
Okay. So any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Jason. I think we'll go ahead and move on.
Katie,
And,
I'll be in touch with you guys to let you know, and we'll get the ball rolling. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks for all your work, gentlemen. Appreciate the explanations.
Thank you.
We are at item 10, WTA comments.
I am here. Good
There
evening.
she is. Hi, Tessa.
Hello. How are you, Mr. Bolds and Willits Unified School District Board of Trustees? Welcome, Diane. Right about now, I'm really missing the refreshment part of meetings where we could go over and eat a cookie or something to get our blood sugar going again. Okay, here we go.
There's gotta be a kitchen in your house.
Spirit Days, we've had. Yeah, when I'm sitting over here at a computer. We've been having Spirit Days at all the school sites, and I think that's helping a little bit. Every little bit does help to keep our spirits up these days. I know over at Blosser, we got to see a traveling lanterns production of Scrooge. Normally the kids would sit in the cafeteria and watch one of these things live, but they did get to see one long distance. And I think they've had the whole week of Spirit Days over at Brookside. I don't know what the secondary schools have done, if anything, but knowing how silly all those teachers are, I'm sure something happened. Hot Winners Night is happening this Friday. I'm really excited about that. It's going to be a different format, and I don't know if anyone is here that wanted to speak about it, but I know it's going to be virtual. And my husband, who is the president of the Willits Center, or the theater, they had to do Zoom performances long distance. So it'll really be interesting to see what the kids in our community come up with, and how the teachers guide them in doing that performance art visually. Distance learning, it's awesome. So WTA sadly is not going to be able to continue the tradition with our second annual Christmas party. We had a really good one last year, but obviously we can't have one this year. However, we do have some enthusiastic party planners who are looking forward to coming up with something for us to do in January virtually. They're creative, they'll figure it out. Very importantly, we have the science fair coming up in January, end of January-ish timeframe. And we're all very concerned about our students having access to supplies and materials and equipment they might need to do it. And I got an email today from Aaron Vaccaro saying, if you would like to borrow equipment or you need materials for a science fair project, to please go to sciencefair@willitsunified.com. You know, I know our kids are going to need help, so I just want to make sure we all know that that's available, that there are resources, and this might be a really good time to be at home and really record data because there's nothing else to do. Okay, report cards have gone out. In the elementary level, we had comments only, not grades. It was based mostly on attendance and participation and percentage wise, all the time, most of the time, some of the time. And then, you know, any data that we've been able to pull, we don't know how the integrity of the data, because a lot of the testing is done, you know, long distance, and there could be influences, but we're getting a good idea of where they're at reading and math wise. So I don't know, maybe Mr. Westerberg could speak more about the grading system over at the high school when it's his turn to talk, because I didn't find out very much. Okay, we are getting new t-shirts for the Willits Teachers Association. We will be rocking them in January, so look forward to seeing Willits teachers bopping around town in our new t-shirt. They're really cool. They've got redwoods on them. We got from Mr. Westerberg, from Superintendent Westerberg, we got air purifiers. They are highly effective. I'm sure he'll talk about the micron number that it filters to. They're in every classroom at every school site. And I've asked all the teachers to report back to me how that's working out. If, you know, if they're all working, I can notice a difference. I noticed the difference, but I don't know. I think it was really good to get. I'm glad we have that tool in our classrooms to help keep the air cleaner. It can't hurt. So thank you very much for providing that for teachers. Last but not least, I'm sure this will be spoken of later, but I just wanted to give Laura Sleeper from the Willits Teachers Association, past, present, and probably future, because many of the things that she has done for the teachers in our community have resonated. And she has just sprinkled that kindness glitter all over our teacher community. And we're really going to miss her. So just give out a shout out for Laura Sleeper and all that she's done. And thank you. And with that, my report concludes, Mr. Bolds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Unless there's any questions or discussion.
That Maria is on the meeting, and that maybe Maria could say something about how the secondary schools are grading. But then she's disappeared.
I'm right here.
Oh, there she is.
Yes, well, at Bechtel, we have A, Bs, and credit, no credit. So those are the grades that we're using right now. I don't know what the high school has. I imagine Mr. Westerberg does.
I do. They've been used some traditional gradings, but to be honest with you, online classes always have 3 grades, A, B, and F. I mean, either you're self-motivated or not self-motivated, unfortunately. And the high school's been using that. When I do my report, I'll give you some data from high school. And Maria and I have talked, and Mike and I have talked about some remediation things we're going to put into place, because we know we're going to go back into session at some point and we have some catch up to do. So I'll have some information on that.
Very good. Dan, CSEA.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to start off with it's good to have a new board in place. We'll see how this next year or 2 goes. The classified staff is working out pretty good, considering that we do have quite a few openings right now, quite a few staff that aren't here. So we're working it out with the district to make it happen. And the CSA, I'd like to thank Laura Sleeper for all her help. I know yesterday was her last day on the job, but she'll probably be bouncing out in and out till the end of the year. And the district will, as always, will miss qualified people that do great work and consider everybody in their tasks. And good luck, Laura. Thank you.
And board comments. And let's go ahead and let's start with Diane.
Oh, I'd like to thank the city and the Willits area for the school district, the election and being elected. And I will do my best to serve you as best I can.
Very good, thank you. Jeannie.
I wanted to thank Bob Kolvig for his work on the board, but all the work that he's done throughout the years on behalf of the students at Willits Unified School District. I worked with Bob for a while at the high school, and he was always a wonderful presence, and both for staff, other staff, as well as for the students. So anyway, I wish him the best. And I also wish Laura Sleeper the best. I always feel like Laura's a kindred soul, and I am always just amazed at the wonderful job that she does and her wonderful energy, and she does it with such love and kindness. And I've seen her through Rotary also. She was in Rotary Club for a couple of years and took a very active role, and she's going to be missed in the Willits community, and I'm sure she'll take her good heart in her new community and spread it there too. So, and I also wanted to specifically thank the kindergarten and first grade teachers for the work that they're doing one-on-one with kids. And my granddaughter started first grade, and she missed half of kindergarten because of the shutdown, and then she started first grade, and she didn't have to just deal with her classmates, and well, she didn't have to just deal with her teacher online. She's been meeting once a week for half an hour with her teacher one-on-one. And so that person she sees on a screen that's teaching her is a person that she has some personal interaction with as a warm human being. And my granddaughter, who's behind in reading a little bit, also is now working with an aide once a week to improve her reading. And so I know that I believe that all the kindergarten and first grade teachers are working one-on-one with their students at least once a week. And I think it makes a huge difference at that age level. And I also got to attend Bethel Grove Middle School's 6th grade award ceremony yesterday. It was really interesting to me to see how things are done virtually. And I thought that Marie and Mackenzie did a really good job of doing the award ceremony virtually. So anyway, that's about it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Paula?
There. I don't have a whole lot tonight. I have spoken with a number of people who are having some issues that I'm hoping get resolved really soon. And I'm also really interested in reiterating how important it is to me to be able to observe the hiring of the new EL teachers that are coming. And I'm pleased to see that the liaison for between school and home for Spanish speakers is been hired, the second one. I had an opportunity to meet the first one the other day, and that was an interesting event. I really want no misunderstanding on how important bilingual education is to me and how very involved I really do expect to be, at least in the observation or the observing of hiring and things like that. I understand that all it takes is knowledge of when the interviews are happening and letting me know so that I can show up. So I really do expect that to happen. I did have a question about solar panels, and whatever was the outcome, I know that they didn't generate the money we had expected, but I thought that a couple of months ago that was going to come back to the board and we were going to get a report a little more precise from them. So maybe that can happen at the next time, but I'll bring that up again at the end, unless I'm sort of depending on you, Alex, because you knew so much about it in the first place. If you could maybe, at your convenience, you know, clue us all in, because that was a pretty big deal.
I do have a report for the board.
Oh, yay. Okay.
I'm sure you'll really like it. It's really interesting reading.
Is it? Oh, I don't give it that much credit, but I do know that I started to pay attention and I didn't get to finish. And so I would like to know what's happening. And that's about all. I'm glad to see you, Diane. And I do think it should become more and more interesting as every meeting passes.
Very good. Thank you, Paula.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Chavez. You still got to unmute.
My space bar wasn't working. I just want to thank everybody out there that's continuing and getting better at doing the job with this whole distance learning and dealing with the COVID. I appreciate the hard work that's being done. One thing I've always said is that the best people I've met are people in education. And unfortunately, we're going to lose to Bob and Laura. They're both great, warm-hearted people. I was fortunate to have a chance to spend some time with them, and they're going to be sorely missed, and I wish them the best wherever they go. Also, I'd like to welcome Diane. I've worked with Diane before, and so welcome aboard, Diane. And I know Diane's a hard worker. She was one of the hardest working teachers at the school. So I appreciated the work she put into the classroom, and I'm sure she's going to do the same on the board. So thank you for joining the board. Other than that, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Happy Hanukkah.
Happy Hanukkah.
And I'll keep my comments very short as usual. I'm going to miss Bob on the board. Again, as I made mention in my little comments there earlier, that Bob is one of my favorite people on the planet, and we've known Bob and the entire family for a long, long time. We've had a great relationship over the years. I know I'll still be able to count on Bob for board advice from time to time when I feel I need somebody else another shoulder to cry on, if you will. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, the Colvig family and their dedication to education is simply amazing. And I'd like to echo those same kinds of comments about Laura Sleeper. Laura Sleeper went way out of her way when I first got on the board to try and make me as comfortable as possible as I learned how to operate on the board. I think I've mentioned in the past that not being an educator, my learning curve once I got on the board was very steep, and I felt and still oftentimes feel way behind the curve simply because I'm not an educator and I don't have the same perspective as an educator when it comes to dealing with many of the issues that come our way. So Laura went way out of her way to help me develop the skills I needed to be at least marginally successful in my role as a board member. So Laura is going to be sorely missed, as well as Mr. Colvig. Beyond that, obviously we continue to deal with the COVID-19 issues. I'm gratified to hear that most all of us in one form or another are finding ways to cope. Some ways better than others. Part of the reason why I asked a couple of those questions of the charter school folks that attended our meeting earlier about how they're dealing with it. Sounds like many of them are having the same kinds of issues that we are dealing with, and all of them are working their way through it. They're having similar issues with respect to the kids that are going to do well. They're going to find a way to do well despite us. The kids that aren't going to do well, they're the ones that are falling further and further behind. And I'm just hoping that there is an end in sight with this COVID situation that will soon get our kids back in class. And that's really all I've got. Mark?
Okay, I'm going to run through a lot of things quickly, so if you're going to take some notes, sharpen your pencil. Okay? The drinking fountain project is almost mercifully done at this point. We only have a couple more to get. Everything's installed and getting running. There are filtered, chilled, bottle filling drinking fountains all over the place at every site. And so that was a major issue. There's a grant that I got for about $170,000, and we're well into the project and almost done. It'll be done before we leave for Christmas break. And they are waterproof, freeze resistant. So that's a good thing. Remediation at schools. We're doing, Mike and I and Maria and I have already talked about some remediation issues. For example, we need to make sure we have a significant summer school program, especially in math and language arts, that's available and we direct students to. So we're going to have to really plan well in the summer to use some of that time to catch our students up. Also, the scheduling, for example, at the high school, we know we're going to have a problem with algebra, pre-algebra with students. And because we're in a trimester schedule, Mike and I are going to adjust math to be 3 trimesters long instead of 2 in those 2 areas. So Algebra 1 will be over 3 trimesters and Bridge Algebra will be over 3. So the kids will be able to be caught back up much easily. Our grading data from the high school, I listened to most of Mendocino counties talking about theirs, which are really, really bad. Our failure rate is not really that bad at the high school. And And predominantly the failures are 9th and 10th graders. They're not junior seniors. In fact, if anything, the seniors are graduating left and right because they're getting their credits in. So there's a lot of remediation to be done. My big issue with remediation is math, especially at secondary, and reading in K1, 2, and 3. That's why I really appreciate the K1 teachers doing the one-on-one with kids. That's a huge factor for us to try and maintain some reading level credibility with those young kids. Teachers have new laptops now. All of the kids in the district, K-12, have a device. K and 1 have iPads that are brand new, and Chromebooks grades 2 through 12. And an air purifier has been put in every room. We have tons of PPE stuff on. We have tons of disinfectant. In short, we have everything we need to get back into school, except good data in the community. So we're ready to go. We have all the stuff, but you know, the numbers have to trend a little better for us to even get close to that. I certainly want to acknowledge Laura's work. She's been invaluable for me coming here to transition. She's a history lesson, she's a calming factor, and she's super knowledgeable. And both Trina and I have valued in that. Trina is now our acting HR person, and we've known this for a while. That was the great thing that Laura told us this a year ago. So Trina's been attending classes and seminars and working with Laura for a year now. So Laura's just a speed dial away for both of us. Even though she's retired, she always answers our calls. She'll be in the district about 6 or so days. She's also interested in going to if we go to job fairs, she wants to go to those with us. And she's been a great presence, and she's a great trainer, and she will train Trina very well and always be a good resource. So Laura's done a wonderful job, and you know, like I said, we're not replacing that position yet, but Trina's going to be the acting HR person. Rochelle is also in on the call tonight because she's learning how to take the notes and do the board agenda. We're trying to, for the rest of the year, mesh those duties between the three of us. And now that we're into the school year, we're not going into a negotiations year, we're in a lot better shape to be able to do that for this year. So I'm pretty comfortable we'll be able to handle the duties that are needed. In regards to testing, I've really been a stickler with the county about getting testing. So we are looking for testing for COVID testing. I've talked to Dr. Matheson. He's been approved to be a tester, and he's talking about potentially using Blosser in a couple weeks as a COVID testing site on the weekends. I've also talked with the county about having tests available for teachers, and not this 6-day nonsense. That doesn't help us. We have 3 bids now from companies where we get 24 to 48 hour results, and they come on site. And so that's what I'm really looking for. We can't manage this pandemic with folks in the building without real testing and results, because there's no subs hanging around. You know, if I have 2 or 3 adults who get it, we have real problems trying to cover that. So I've really been working with the county on that. We all think we'll have a solution to that fairly soon. But it's just like everything else in the COVID world. If you wait too long, somebody else is going to snag their services. So we're trying to be the first ones out of the gate instead of the last. But that's a big issue for me, is testing. And other than that, things are going well. We only took in water in 3 sites over these rainy days, so we're patching those holes. We are well on the way in planning for bond projects. And so we have 4 big projects that we're looking at, which is three are really big. The Blosser roof, the high school parking lot, and heating and cooling in the main high school building, because there's no ventilation in that building at all. And the other one's a pretty simplistic one about fixing the pool to be a year-round pool. But those things are projects, but we have a lot of others on the list that we got to get to. So a lot of work's going on prior to, so we can hit the ground running. So that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you, sir. I believe we are at the consent agenda. Is that right?
That's correct.
Any public comments on the consent agenda items? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. Somebody like to give us a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Seconded by who? Okay, Jeannie. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor for approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Okay,
You can do thumbs up too. There you go, Paula. That's easier than your mute button.
I know.
All right, so we're down to approval of resolution 2020/21-5, certification to Board of Supervisors, Mendocino County. This is part of the bond project.
Yes, this is certifying the election. And I've used this line a lot, but it's probably apropos to use it one more time. We have 100% of the people in the community who know we need to fix our facilities. And now we have 60% of the people who said, not only do you need to fix them, here's the money to do it. So the community's given us the green light and said, get it done. So I'm really pleased about that.
I don't think so.
They can hear you.
So do we have a motion to approve? Excuse me, a motion to approve item C. Item C. Robert?
Robert's muted.
You have to help all of us.
Yeah, I'll move to approve motion C.
Okay, Robert, to approve. Any second?
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Is there discussion? So, just so you understand, this is a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Willits Unified School District certifying to the Board of Supervisors of Mendocino County all proceedings in a November 3rd general obligation bond election. It is a resolution, and because it's a resolution, it has to be a roll call vote. And so if all of the board would please unmute. And we'll start with Mr. Chavez.
Aye.
And Ms. King.
Aye.
And
you can do it for me.
Ms. McNeil.
We lost her.
Did we lose her again?
Yeah.
Diane, Diane, are you out there? Okay, Ms. Nunez?
Aye.
And myself, aye. And I guess we'll show as absent for this vote is Ms. McNeil. This moving on to item D, approval of resolution 2020-21-6, Measure I Oversight Committee Governing Bylaws. And we have a motion to approve item D.
I move that we approve item D, a resolution of the Board of the Trustees of the Willits Unified School District adopting bylaws governing the Measure I Citizens Oversight Committee.
Perfect. And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Well, this is all very scripted, and it's a requirement to have an oversight committee. So it is not, there's nothing unique in this that any other district does not have.
And just some real basic information on the oversight committee. I know we discussed this before, but the oversight committee is a committee that will oversee our expenditures of those bond funds. Their job is not to approve, disapprove projects. Their job is simply to oversee the spending of those bond funds to ensure that we actually spend those funds as the bond information or the bond documents require. So in other words, we can't spend as bond funds on new vehicles. It has to be spent on repair and maintenance of facilities. Is there any discussion on item D? Hearing none, call for the vote. Once again, it is a resolution. So we'll start with, I'm just trying to keep all this stuff straight here. Start with Robert.
Aye.
Jeannie.
Aye.
Paula.
Aye.
I got a thumb up.
Aye.
Okay. And
To let you
Diane.
know, Diane's computer froze. She sent me a thing that said it froze just a minute ago. So
Yeah.
if you know how to fix that from where you are so she can get back on, she would.
I don't think I have that kind of magic, but
Oh, darn. Okay.
yeah, just text her back real quick just to restart her iPad. She's using an iPad. Just turn it off and
Yeah.
on.
Oh, okay.
And that should work.
Okay.
So we are at item E, approval of resolution 2020-21-7, issuance and sale of general obligation bonds. Again, we've had a great presentation by our bond counsel. So everybody should be up to speed with that. Like a motion to approve.
I move that we approve the resolution 2020-2021-7 regarding the
Okay.
bond.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Do we have any discussion on item E?
I just want to mention the fact again that the district is asking for $25, not $40. I think we need to make sure we tell folks that often, because we're doing exactly what we said we would do. We would look at the economy, we would look at our situation and make sure that if we weren't certain, we weren't going to put a burden on the taxpayers. Then the $25 will get us enough to get started and do what we need to do. And 2 or 3 years from now, you can look at the next portion to see when and how much.
Exactly.
I just want to thank Adam and his company for his presentations have always been very informative. He's patient. He's takes questions from people that don't understand very well and is able to bring things down. And he's really been a good asset through this whole process.
Yeah.
Along those same lines, this is working with Adam and those folks is a pleasure in comparison to the folks that we dealt with in the 2008-2009 bond series there. These people are very much absolutely upfront, honest, just solid people to work with. You don't get any feeling at all of any underhanded stuff going on. These people are professionals, and I feel real confident that we're not making anywhere. We're just not making mistakes like were made with the prior bond. Just that simple. Once again, this is a resolution, so we'll call for the vote. Robert?
Aye.
Jeannie?
Aye.
Paula?
Aye.
Diane? Did you make it back yet?
Make it back. No,
I
they're
can't
alphabetical.
And myself, aye. Item F, approval of bond purchase agreement, Stipple, Nicholas and Company Incorporated. Yeah. There we go. A lot of boilerplate paperwork.
You are correct.
Like to get a motion to approve.
Also move.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
And is there any discussion with respect to item F, approval of bond purchase agreement?
This is to get our folks the permission to go out there and sell the bonds. You just set the rate, and this is setting the people in place to go do the sale.
Any further discussion? Okay, so I'll call for the vote. This is not a resolution.
I have a question. Are the bonds at market rate, or how do you determine that?
Well, the bonds are actually sold and fluctuate up and down. It depends on they're selling to, they're being purchased by individuals. And so they're on a market, and most of the people who buy bonds like this have a broker who goes out and buys them. And so they look at the market and they choose the bonds they want to purchase. And so what Stiefel does, they go out and solicit the bonds. We have Willits Unified School District with $4 million in bond notes, and it's an A+ district in rating, and they're at this interest rate. And so they basically sell the bonds for us. So the rate, you know, it's like buying any stock. It just depends on the day you're buying it.
It varies daily.
Yeah, the going rate is really good right now in interest. That's the issue. Bond purchasers are looking for something to put their money in that's a guaranteed investment. And you always get your money back on school bonds. So it's not a gamble for the investor. So it just depends on how the stock market is rolling and who's interested in doing it.
Okay, thank you for that information, Mark. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, it's been motioned and seconded. Any further questions regarding item F? I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye?
Aye.
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 Okay, it's 100%. We still don't have Diane yet, right? Okay.
No, I sent her a text message. We do have a Nikki sighting.
That's good, because we're at item G, the approval of first interim budget.
So Mark, do you want to set it up so that I can screen share?
Yes, ma'am. Let me take care of that. And before Nikki gets going, I want to just make sure that folks understand that Nikki has worked really hard to get us in place, and I'm really pleased with the work that she got done. I think you're going to find that we're right on track where we had hoped we would be. I think she'll have some good news on our cash flow, and I think we have pretty good news on where we're at overall. So can you share that out, Nick? There you go.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with just some a little summary of notes about the bulk of the changes that we're seeing. So there are obviously, you know, it's just a time of a lot of uncertainty, a lot of change. There have been a lot of things we've had to incorporate as we moved through distance learning and incorporating the COVID relief funds. So just some highlights here for us. In the unrestricted revenue, we are in a hold harmless category for the bulk of our LCFF funding. That means that despite the fact that our enrollment is down this year, we aren't going to lose a big chunk of revenue related to that. They're funding us at the same ADA levels that we were at last year, which is really important. I think the vast majority of schools in the state are in this situation. I think the COVID situation has, had an impact on all district enrollments. However, the unduplicated count drives our supplemental concentration grant funding, which is a component of the LCFF. And that is still based on this year's data collection of unduplicated count. They extended our deadline for collecting that data until the end of this month. So I am still working with an estimate. Typically by this time of year, we would have a solid number for that. But I'm still using an estimate and therefore trying to be somewhat conservative so that we don't have any unpleasant surprises. Another thing to point out that had a really, helpful impact for us is that there was 2 pieces of revenue that I did miss getting in for 19-20 when we closed the books. And one of them was one of our bus grants. So what this means is that we booked the expenditure related to the purchase of the bus last year and did not recognize the revenue yet. So we're recognizing that revenue this year. That just improves our, it basically just replenishes what we spent last year. Let's see here. So in terms of expenditures, there was a fair bit of movement. We are making some adjustments as we go through the year on some of our variable type purchasing categories. Hard to predict. We left some things in place at the beginning of the year not knowing what this year would bring. So things like substitute costs are obviously not going to be a big cost for us this year the way they would in some years. So I did make some reductions to that. We did make some movement of our FTE within the budget. And then we also had some additional FTE that, because of the uncertainty, that we did not fill. So those we took off the books. We also had some other vacancies, bus driver in particular. And I think at this point, my understanding is we'll probably address that next year. And so I did remove those vacancies. Let's see, what else is going to be important here? Oh, one item that I think it doesn't have a huge impact on the bottom line, but you may see impacts of it within categories, is some of the ways that I had been accounting for the ESSER funds. Those were funds that came to us directly from the federal government in support of COVID relief. And initially those were set up as what we call a direct cost transfer, where we move that and offset the cost within that category or within that resource. This time I cleaned it up because we know more about what the actual costs are. And so we're seeing the expenses actually show up in things like salary and benefits and other things, as opposed to one chunk right there. So it basically spreads those costs out throughout the budget. But it's not a change to the total amount. And let's see, on the restricted side, this is where there's a lot of change this time, because obviously all of these one-time funds that we received for COVID are all considered restricted funds. So you'll definitely see that as you review the multi-year projection in particular. You can see that we have kind of a spike this year of that revenue. It's one-time revenue. So then as we look at the out years in the multi-year, some of that revenue does drop out. We also had some other programs that were impacted by flexibilities due to COVID. So things like our ACES grant, which funds our kids club programs, as well as our CTE incentive grant and our workability grants. We got some carryover allowances on those, and typically ACES and workability would not allow that. So that did really improve our ability to use those programs in a way that helps kids, because between March and June, things happened really fast and we weren't, sure exactly what that would all look like. So now we were able to use some of those funds throughout the first half of this year. Most of them have a deadline of 12/30, so we're coming up on the end of those. But it does impact where we're seeing a little bit of higher cost. It's due to the fact that we actually still have those funds available. In terms of our restricted expenditures, we are, did I go into the multi-year? No. We have some movement I mentioned earlier from the unrestricted side over to the restricted side of the budget. We also added an aide position at Sanhedrin that was necessary in order to assist with the independent study and distance programs that are happening. And let's see, we also, I think we mentioned this on the other side. Mark mentioned also the water grant. So we do see some impact in this budget for the water grant. Part of the water grant got booked last year and the other half is happening this year. So we had about half and half. So we'll see half of it this year, and then in the multi-year projection that drops out in the second year. So getting into the multi-year projection, multi-year projections, of course, are always a challenge. We're just using the assumptions of what we know now and saying if nothing else changes or incorporating all known factors, here's what it would look like. And of course, there's more uncertainty now than ever, so that was a real challenge. We have several positions that we are funding currently with some of these restricted funds. And so those things had to move back into the unrestricted side of the budget after we move into next year. Because of the way these funds are booked, we do have a little bit that we're carrying over to next year. It's about $97,000. And although we may get the revenue now, we don't recognize it until it's spent. So right now we're setting aside about 1 FTE's worth to use in next year. And then that means that revenue will also be recognized in next year. In terms of our LCFF funding, what we're seeing is that we're in the hold harmless I mentioned for this year. We hold fairly steady going into next year. But then in the third year, there is quite a bit of a decline. And that just has to do with the sort of catch-up factor of coming out of the hold harmless status and projecting that lower ADA. I'm still very hopeful that we'll see our ADA rise again as we move back into a more traditional model. I think, as people feel comfortable coming back into the regular programs, maybe we'll see that come back up. But for now, because we don't know, we need to be conservative and plan for the possibility that it stays a little bit lower. Let's see. I mentioned earlier already, so we will have, you'll see some lower revenue compared to this year because all those one-time carryovers are coming back out in 21, 22. So the ACES and workability in particular. And then as we move into the expenditure side, we have 3.6 FTE certificated positions and 3.0 FTE classified that will move from the restricted side of the budget to the unrestricted side. So you'll see impacts of that on both sides of the budget. And that has to do with the end of these various funding. And some of it is the COVID relief, but some of it is things that we already had in place. So for instance, the Learning Communities for School Success and the Low Performing Block Grant and CSI, those were all non-COVID related items, but they also just happened to end at the same time. In addition, we will be adding a am I looking at the right thing here? One moment. Oh, I'm sorry, apologies. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that there was one position that we were going to continue funding with the last bit of COVID funds going into next year. So then in the third year of the multi-year projection, 22-23, we also see that position come back over to the unrestricted side of the budget with the end of that funding. In addition, I mentioned we would also try and catch up on the bus driver issue. We have, try and deal with those vacancies, as well as a custodial position that is half vacant right now. And then we also will need to deal with a ROP teacher, or CTE teacher, that we had a funding arrangement with NCOE for many years, and that funding is coming to an end. Currently, that teacher is not on our books, and so we'll have to shift that person back over to our ledger. And then just some other miscellaneous updates to our expenditures. So let me move over to the actual. Yes.
I want to comment on the last one, reduce transfer to food service. Okay. Yeah. We are getting hit really hard again in food service, and it's nothing that's their fault. But because we don't lay anybody off, we keep everybody whole with benefits, retirement, everything. The food service has a ton of money we have to supplant in it this year to keep it whole. Imagine broilers keeping everybody employed all year long with no changes, but only 25% of the revenue coming in, because we're at 25% participation instead of what we normally have. So we're taking a huge hit in food service. Every district is taking this hit. That's why I've been trying to promote with charter school and other folks, hey, come to our seamless summer program and get food, because every reversible lunch or breakfast we get helps bring that number down. So, but you're going to see a giant transfer out to food service, and it's basically to cover, to cut it short, we're covering the restaurant because they're not generating enough revenue.
Got it. Okay.
So I went ahead and switched over to the was there another question?
Yes. How much difference is it? I understood that the amount of money for retirement chunks was going to be a lesser percentage right now because of COVID, et cetera. So how much did it drop from like 11 or 12 that it was?
I'm not sure what you mean. Are you talking about the cost for stirs and PERS?
Stirs and PERS go up as much.
The rates, so you know what, I don't remember the rates offhand. They've changed several times over the last year, like what their projected uses are. So when I'm working on this, I go in and look up whatever that current rate is, and I update to use the most current rates. But it is essentially they kind of put a pause on it for this year. One of them went up a smidge, one went down a smidge, and they kind of netted out to like being a neutral, like no increase for the year. But those increases do begin again going into next year. Stirs actually, I think, goes down briefly next year and then back up again. PERS continues its upward trajectory across all 3 years. But I can certainly email out like the actual rates used.
Oh, good, thanks.
And all that information is in the documentation we have for the bond stuff.
The change for this year that the governor said he was going to deal with?
Yep, it's all in there.
Oh, okay, I didn't see it.
Yeah, it's in the bond document because it's significant part of our expenditures.
It makes for some wonderful reading, Paula.
Does it? Well, I'd really like to see all of these numbers. I really miss these reports on interim budgets and things.
So here we are in the multi-year projection. And let me just scroll down a little bit. I always jump to the bottom, of course. So here we are, we see the net increase or decrease in fund balance. So for current year, we're very close to what we looked at our 45-day revision, which took place in August. I would say actually across all 3 years for that net amount, you know, a lot of items changed up within the budget to get us to that point, but where we land ends up being, I think, fairly close to what we had been looking at over the summer. So obviously, you know, third year out is a little bit more of an intense amount for deficit spending, but clearly being the third year out, that gives us ample time to make any decisions necessary. And clearly there is so much uncertainty in terms of the revenue. We hope that, you know, it would not end up panning out this way. But let's take a quick look at the fund balance. You can see that for the ending balances here, that, you know, we're pretty stable here across the first 2 years, and then it drops off because of that large deficit amount for the third year. We are still meeting the 6% reserve, which is the sort of threshold we show in our budgets. I would say, you know, I would never want us to actually get to that point. 6% is perilously low. Most of the fiscal agencies recommend 2 months of operating expenditures, which are about 17%. And so, you know, we're in much better shape here the first 2 years. I think that all told, with everything that has taken place, the changes that have happened, you know, I think we've adapted exceptionally well this year, and have really tried to meet all of the needs and not overextend ourselves in a pretty scary economic time. Now, here at the top, I'll go back up to that LCFF revenue, and wanted to highlight here, you know, here's for this year and then next year, so very stable, and then we see this drop. And, you know, this is all based on if the state continues to fully fund LCFF in the way that they are now. So we know that the governor's January proposal for this current year was actually to do some reductions, quite significant reductions. And ultimately they did at the state level choose to move in a different direction. They fully funded the LCFF. However, they balanced their budget by using cash deferrals. So at this time, we're expecting to have total deferrals of about $2.9 million, where we will not receive that cash until next year. So that makes a pretty big impact on us in terms of cash flow. I do, before I switch gears over to that, is there anything else that you guys would like to touch on in terms of the multi-year projection? Or any questions?
I have one question that has to do with the basically the COVID funding that had to be spent before the end of the year. Are we on track to make sure we've done all that?
Yeah, we're in good shape. Mark and I have been in constant communication about that, and Jenny as well, doing our accounts payable, because we're having to really assess if we had purchase orders and things in place, are they realistically going to take place within that time frame? Jenny's working hard to follow up with vendors and, you know, clear up any invoices and things. And, you know, Mark and I have had a lot of discussions about being strategic, because, you know, we have these different pots of money. So if there's anything that can happen now, hitting those first. And so I think that we're in good shape with that. That was definitely one of the factors in terms of doing this particular budget update. That was a lot of extra time incorporating that into this as accurately as possible.
We've been working hard to make sure that we don't send a dime back. And so
yeah,
it's a lot of,
doesn't feel like an acceptable.
Well, it takes a lot of maneuvering and looking at what we're doing and what expenses qualify and don't. But yeah, we're going to make sure we hit our threshold. The other thing I wanted to note about these projections, probably more so than any other time, year 3 on this projection is totally a guess. Year 2, I think we're okay. Our ADA numbers, just to let you know, there are 240,000 less students in California this year. Now, a ton of that are kindergartners. Our kindergarten numbers are down also. A lot of parents who have a child have said, I'm going to hold my kid back this year because I can. And so our kindergarten numbers are off, and so are lots of people. So we're hoping our ADA gets back to where it belongs, because that does change a lot of this math changes with ADA.
Are there any other questions on the multi-year projection before we take a look at the cash flow? Stop.
Nope, go ahead.
I think you got them spellbound, Nikki.
Yes, it's fascinating, huh? Okay, so here's the cash flow. Now, this is actually a bright spot for the night. There have been a lot of iterations of this, and county office and I have worked really closely to try to hone in on a good projection. We did see some versions of this previously that looked significantly worse, and we were in fact showing several months where we anticipated to be negative cash. We had a good change that happened at this LCFF calculation. Our total amount of LCFF, we didn't really see a big change from our last budget version to this one. However, there was a shift between categories within that, and about 1.2 million of our funding is now being estimated to be part of the EPA component of LCFF. And that particular component is protected from the deferrals. And so total amount didn't change, but a shift within categories has now protected a big chunk of it from being subject to these deferrals. So that was a really positive change for us. As well, we tightened up the schedule and where within the year we think things will hit. So that had a lot to do with all these particular timings, you know, of the COVID funds being used by December, and a lot of that kind of tweaking that we had to really make sure that this was a good projection. So it really improved the outcome. I will say that, you know, for the ending fund balance in terms of a cash balance, that's still a little lower than I would like, but it's positive. And ultimately, I think we're pretty confident that we'll be able to do payrolls. And, you know, at this time, I'm cautiously optimistic that we will not need to do a tran. I'm going to still ask the board to approve the resolution for the tran so that if anything changes, we are positioned do that tran as necessary, because it's just absolutely critical that we have no interruptions to our operations, our ability to make payroll every month. But at this time and based on this cash flow, I'm really optimistic that we would not need to actually issue a tran.
And just to add into that, this does not reflect any of the conversations they've talked about deferring the deferrals or any of that stuff, because the revenue was better than what they had initially projected. This doesn't take that into account. So if we
this is the fullest possible deferral. Yeah, this doesn't show any improvement. So we only get better from here, I think.
Yeah, we're hoping to fill Nikki's glass of water up to about 3/4.
The other thing that I will say in terms of the cash flow is that, you know, this does still go through June, and that is something I'm still planning to do with the county. Is they have they've made this tool available to plug in our multi-year projection data, and I just did not have time to get to that step before the meeting. So that is something we'll do, is we'll plug some of that in so that we can look at next year as well. Especially the further we go in this year, it's going to be important that we be able to take a look at the summer and fall going into next year. It should still be okay, but we have to keep in mind that these deferrals, they don't just happen once and then we're done. The way this is set up with the state's budget is that until they reach a point where they actively buy those deferrals down, that deferral schedule remains in place year after year. So we're hopeful that within the next couple of years, they can make some improvements there. But we have to kind of settle in with the idea for the long haul. So any questions on cash?
So obviously the cash flow is there. And in theory, if everything goes the way you hope, we won't need the TRAN. Obviously, you've given us all the information to move forward with the TRAN, so that it's our ace in the hole should we need it. The question I have with respect to that is, what are the costs to the district associated with the TRAN?
They're relatively minor. So, I don't have the figure right in front of me. When I spoke to the woman at sort of the beginning of this process, she was estimating that at the size we were looking at, and at that time, we thought our full deferral would be closer to 4 million. So she was looking at it for a larger amount. And I believe the total was between 20 and 25,000 total. So part of this pooled TRAN program that they're doing, it's designed to be more efficient and cost effective for districts, so that we're not all individually, tackling these fees and having to retain all of the financial people and legal support and everything. They're consolidating that effort and giving us an economy of scale savings by doing that. So I felt like that was a very reasonable fee, for that volume of borrowing. At this point, even if we were to have to borrow, I would think it would be significantly less than what we initially estimated. As it is, our update to what we expect to have deferred is now, closer to 3 million than 4 million. And even within that, I would think I can't imagine we would go over 1 million unless something dramatic changes. So I think our costs would only go down from there.
Nikki, I also had another question that I think Alex asked this before, is how long are we in the TRAN for? Is this an annual thing you do?
It's okay. So the cycle on this, I believe it's a 13-month payback. But part of joining this pool is that it's a somewhat hands-off process. So they have designed a repayment schedule that is based on the state's LCFF allocation schedules. So when they know that districts are getting the funds from the state, they essentially just take it right out of those funds before it even gets to us. It takes a lot of the work off, and we're not having to agonize over what our payment schedule looks like. But I would say, in terms of once you're in it, you're in it. That has more to do with the fact that now that they've initiated deferrals, and until they buy them down, we should expect to see deferrals each year. That means that we're in a position to constantly have to be looking at our cash balances and maybe make that same decision again next year.
Yeah, I think Alex's question was more in line about, what if the economy really tanks for 2 or 3 years? Do we have to reapply to be in this TRAN every year?
Oh, yes. Yes. So that, in terms of participation, the one that we're working on, it's a spring TRAN for this fiscal year. So then if we needed to look at another one next year, yes, it would be a separate process.
Okay. So this TRAN is really just created for this fiscal year, especially the ending part of the year.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Good news on the cash flow.
Yep. So there's a couple other items that I do. I think one of them actually may be a separate agenda item, so maybe I need to wait on that. The parent summary, is that a separate agenda item here?
It is a separate agenda item.
Okay, so I'll wait on that. I do have one last piece specific to the first interim, and this is also a compliance requirement. So we've talked many times about the reserve cap. So at the state level, several years ago, they had put in place this reserve cap, which would be triggered if certain economic factors took place, and we've yet to have that happen, and I'm grateful for that. But part of the language also dictates that we must show what our reserves are and discuss our reasons for maintaining a reserve if it is over the minimum. So as I mentioned earlier, the state minimum is 3%. If this cap were ever to come into place, it would be double the minimum, so 6%. So that is the reason that when I'm showing on our budgets, you know, the reserve for economic uncertainty, I use 6% because our board has not set another percentage. The board certainly could do so, but without having a formal policy in place, I use the 6% just to show that metric. And ultimately, 6% would be very low. So, I mean, we have very good cause, and it is highly recommended by fiscal agencies to maintain much closer to 17 to 20% in terms of a reserve. So typically, you know, when we're filling this out, we're discussing what are the reasons we would maintain over that minimum. And I think there's obviously a lot of good reasons, you know, economic uncertainties, saving for projects, old facilities, vehicle replacements, technology replenishments. It was certainly interesting completing this form now in the midst of huge economic crises, because I think it's pretty self-explanatory at this point why we should be maintaining strong reserves. And looking at the cash flows, I think really illustrates that, you know, not only does it help us, if in fact, I mean, we're still not certain that we won't see budget reductions going into next year. You know, the state budget is still going to be an issue. Having a fund balance allows us to take time and be strategic as we move through those challenges that come our way, instead of being reactionary and having to do things quickly. And then it also helps us from a cash flow perspective. You know, I think it's really to be able to, you know, if we need to use the train, we'll use the train, but it sure would be nice to make it through this without having to pay someone else money in order to make our payroll. So anyways, this is a compliance thing that we have to do each year. Are there any questions about it?
I have one. Now, I thought that the cap on reserves was at 10%, but that was waived for districts under 2,500 ADA.
Yeah, so it's not, I'm not sure about that 10%. It's double whatever your district's state minimum is. And so districts all have different levels. There could be districts that have a 5%, therefore theirs would be a minimum or a maximum. But yes, it is waived for districts under 2,500. This component of the requirement to show the substantiation is not waived. So for us, like we're going to be in a position where, you know, with our enrollment, the state can't come in and dictate that we spend our reserve down. However, we are still subject to this compliance requirement to substantiate why we continue to hold this type of a reserve.
Good. When I got on the board, we were struggling to maintain a 3% reserve. So we were basically qualified in the out years. And there were a lot of reasons for that occurring because we had a significant downturn in the economy back then, and it caused us some significant grief because our reserves were so low to start with. Fortunately, we've been diligent about increasing those reserves again to the 6% area. That's helped a huge amount, obviously, because it does give us the time, because obviously COVID came along, and those financial uncertainties reared their ugly heads, and it's given us an opportunity to be able to make, like you said, strategic moves and to weather this storm a whole lot better than we could have. So,
yeah, and ultimately, I mean, we see the ripple of effects in other ways. I mean, for instance, Adam was discussing going through the rating process, and when the rating agencies are looking at us, they want to see that we have stability and that we're not riding the line. That in of itself is going to have impacts to, how that credit rating happens, and then the further implications of how that then impacts those bonds and the bond rates. So, there's just a lot of good reasons for having some conservative discussion about the balances and how we can just protect ourselves. There's a lot coming at us as an agency, and changes happen fast, and we just do the best we can to be prepared and be as stable as we can for our employees and our students.
Thank you for the presentation, Nikki. Very informative.
I just want to throw in there that I need to give Nikki like 3 or 4 days off, because let's just say there's a saying in our office that I'm the idea person and they're the detail. And her and Laura and Trina and Jenny and Linda Walker have all been doing crazy stuff with all the movement we had to do prior to once we got into COVID problems. Then we have to do a first interim in a deficit spending year with a ton of deferrals coming and worry about cash flow. And then we got the COVID money we had to spend before December. It's been a pretty hectic year on the left side of the building here.
Yeah, and just looking at the paperwork, we complicated that even more by throwing all the reporting necessary to get this bond thing in place.
Yeah, but we're there. We're going to get our COVID money spent. Our financial picture by all the movement got us to a plus budget this year. We're going to not cash flow, most likely have any issues there and have to borrow. We passed a bond and now we can move on. So we're in really pretty good shape. I'm really pleased about where we're at financially and structurally. It's taken a lot of work, and hopefully, that work will pay off.
Awesome. So do we have a motion to approve our first interim budget report?
I'll move to approve.
We have a second?
I'll second it.
Any more questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor of approving item H, approval of the budget, approval of the first interim budget report? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we go into item H, approval of budget overview for parents. This is something I haven't noticed before.
Well, so we have seen it one time previously. However, it was rolled in as part of the LCAP document last year. And this year, as you know, we did not do an actual LCAP. We did the learning continuity plan instead of the LCAP. And they stated that we still needed to complete this one piece of it. And so this it really restates a lot of information that we've already seen but it's a requirement that we complete this piece of it. And so ultimately what they did this year is they also added where they highlighted what the federal CARES funds were as well. So typically we would just see LCFF, federal, state, local, but this time they also showed the CARES funds. I want to point out into that, so I mentioned earlier that we have a piece of that CARES fund budgeted for next year, and so this 1.5 million doesn't not incorporate that piece of it, so that would be next year's budget. Ultimately,
okay.
they want to see, so here's the second page. Ultimately, what they want to see is we took the learning continuity plan and we actually made sure that there was an appropriate amount of expenditures with the budget, and that we addressed the needs of high need students. And I believe, Mark, with our learning continuity plan, we have the same approach as to the LCAP in terms of the fact that our students who fit into those categories, we have such a high percentage, we are allowed to take a very holistic approach and say, if we're doing something that improves the whole program, it addresses the needs of those students, because such a high percentage of our student population are those students. And so is that correct understanding,
That's
Mark?
correct. Because we get
Okay.
supplemental concentration, we're over the 55. We're
Right.
significantly over the 55. That,
right.
For example, going 1-to-1 is not just, it's just not for the at-risk students, it's for everybody. Because
Right.
Okay.
And so what we're seeing on this chart is that all of the expenditures we identified within the LCP also address the needs of those high need students. And that total, the 4,139,000, that is a combination of the CARES funds and our supplemental concentration grant. So those were all the things that we identified within the learning continuity plan. We did not go through the learning continuity plan and break out all the use of the supplemental concentration grant. We just identified the lump sum and said, yes, we continue to use these funds to improve or increase services for students. And we left in place all of the sort of structure of what we had identified in our previous year's LCAP remains in place. So we didn't add things into our supplemental concentration grant that we have not previously identified in an LCAP. Let's see, and then I think the last page, this just shows last year a review of where were we with supplemental concentration grant. And so you can see that the amount we had budgeted to the amount we had spent was very close. It was like 99% of what we said we were going to do is what we did. And that is, that's the whole thing.
We're looking for a motion to approve item H, approval of budget overview for parents.
I move that we approve the budget overview for parents.
And a second?
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Okay. And very good. Moving on, we are at approval of resolution 2020/21-8, participation in CSFA's K-12 pooled TRAN. We've had some discussion on that already. Go ahead, Nikki.
I don't have too much more to add. I think we really covered most of it in our previous discussion. This just puts Mark and I in the position that if we need to act quickly in January to make sure that we can cover payroll, we have the ability to do so. I want to clarify this. If we were to have to do that, this is solely for cash flow purposes. This doesn't change our expenditures in any way. We wouldn't be taking out a loan to make other expenditures. It's truly just a cash loan.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve item I, resolution 2021-8, participation in the CSFA K-12 pooled TRAN?
I'll move to approve item I.
And a second?
I'll second.
And Jeannie seconds. Is there any further discussion on the TRAN? We're all real clear on the concept? Hearing no discussion, we'll call for it's a resolution, so it's a roll call vote again. So, Mr. Chavez?
Aye.
Jeannie King?
Aye.
Paula?
Aye.
And I don't see Diane out there anywhere. Diane, are you out there? Diane's missing, and myself, aye.
Diane. She's missing.
So we are at items J and K. Both are first reads. One has to do with superintendent's contract, changes to the language in ed code, board policy for the superintendent's contract. And the other one has to do with consultants. And finally, agenda items for the next meeting. I think Paula would like to hear about our solar consultant report.
Yes, thank you.
And are there any public comments for items not on the agenda? Sorry, it's been a long meeting. Hearing none.
I have something to add. I mentioned in the chat, I've been noticing, because I'm often at Brookside and Blosser, the Brookside sites, not so far, but the Blosser sites, the water fountains, they're not always been changed with the filter, and some of them aren't working. Like the students and the parents that actually come on site and the teachers, the waters aren't always filling the bottles. We're gonna try to get tickets out, and we're gonna mention it to the secretaries. Me and a couple teachers were talking about that, but I just want to let you guys know as well too that that's something that needs to be looked at, because some of them have been not working since last year.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, obviously follow that up through the normal process, and if the normal process doesn't get you get you what you need, then please bring it back to us.
Yeah. Yeah, we just need to know about them. I don't think somebody's assigned to go around and look at them.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Thank you guys. Appreciate that.
Can those things be put on a schedule, Mark, where they the filters are changed regularly?
The reason you don't schedule those is those are really expensive filters in those LK machines. And you don't want to just change them. If one doesn't get used a lot, you don't want to change it unless you need to. What really should happen is the daytime custodian should hear, like Val should hear at Blosser, hey, this drinking fountain's not working, and he should just get a filter and they put it in. But what happens on those LKs is when the filter has run its life cycle out or is plugged, it stops the machine on purpose. And
that's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all they got to do is notify us. But it's not like it's not on a cycle. It really depends more on usage. And now that we have more fountains out there, our usage will be down and probably on each one a little bit, and it'll spread out. But yeah, that's just one of those. It's kind of like changing the oil in your car. Yep. You do it when you get to 3,000 miles.
Okay, we're at adjournment. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to adjourn.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Paula, you got in on the audio.
Hey, I'm finally getting it. No.
All right, thank you everybody for your participation tonight. Sorry it's a long meeting, but there was a lot of stuff to cover. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all.
Yeah, have a happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. All in favor of adjournment?
Hey, Will, everybody.
This is Merry Christmas.
It
Donald
is
Trump
not
say that.
Christmas.
Good night, all.
Stay well, everybody.
Donald Trump say Merry Christmas.